poll was taken and the audience has spoken. I will read Malazan next. Continuing to read Malazan, I mean. And I'm excited to do it. I've been really looking forward to picking that back up. It just means I can't be reading anything else while I'm reading Malazan because, wow, that series requires a lot of focus. But recently, I have been reading The Stand by Stephen King. I wrapped it up today. You should be getting a review of it from me tomorrow, and I'm really excited to do that. But what I wanted to do first was talk about Stephen King's writing style and my opinion on why it echoes so strongly with such a wide audience. Stephen King is the undisputed greatest horror author currently working, and debatably greatest of all time. But why? Why do his books fly off the shelves like crazy? Why do his classics hold up so well that rereading them at night, even if you are the most hardened horror veteran, can still send chills down your spine? Obviously, King has a lot of the typical hallmarks of an incredible horror author. He takes the time to establish a tone within his book and then plays and dances with that tone in a way to really captivate the reader and enhance the entire world, making it feel a lot more real. But I don't think his tones totally outclass all of his peers. I think he is great, but there are other contemporary horror authors who craft just as good atmosphere in their horror writing. Well, the next obvious thing for the horror genre to look at is the monsters. And once again, King has created some of the most iconic horror villains of all time, whether it's It, the Mansion from The Shining. I would even put his recent creation in The Outsider up there among the greats. The Man in Black from Gunslinger, which isn't even horror but still manages to be creepy. And from what I just read, The Stand, Randall Flagg is on another level. There were scenes that I read with Randall Flagg that physically sent chills through me. And I don't think there's anyone who writes quite as good, or at least unique, horror villains like King. But I still do not think that's his strongest asset. To me, the two facets of King's writing that allow him to tower over other horror authors currently is character and concept. The concept is going to be a bit of a complex talk to get into, so let's start out with a little more straightforward: character. King does something in his writing that some authors do, but few execute as well as King does. He acknowledges that human beings are inconsistent. You cannot predict a person's actions. Authors typically just craft characters that fit molds. He's gonna act like a paladin, she's gonna act like a barbarian, well, that halfling's gonna act like a rogue, what have you, and they become fairly predictable. Now, some authors try to rally against this and they go too far in the opposite direction, resulting in unbelievable characters. Having that paladin suddenly turn around and cut off someone's head and drink the blood, while certainly no one expected it, it also just kind of breaks the suspension of disbelief and ruins what character you have managed to establish at that point. This is where King's genius comes in. His character inconsistencies follow what I would consider more realistic, real-world examples. One that immediately springs to mind when reading a lot of King's, not necessarily monsters, but humans or people that are villains, is the inconsistency that the world saw with Ted Bundy. If you do not know, Ted Bundy is arguably the most infamous American serial killer of all time, racking up one of the highest kill counts ever recorded for an individual. But what really jarred people about him was he didn't look it. Ted Bundy was a handsome, charming, attractive guy. There were even reports that he worked at a suicide prevention call center, actually trying to talk people down from taking their own life. To anyone who has neighbors or friends or even family, this is a deeply disturbing thing to learn, that someone that everyone thought was just a normal, average guy was a monster. And yes, in the real world, there are monsters that just more typically fit the mold. Jeffrey Dahmer is another example where most people who met him said something was off about the guy, and then it turned out he ate people and tried to make a zombie sex slave thing. He kind of fits the Stephen King monster mold in a way. But we're not talking about Stephen King's monsters. We're talking about Stephen King's characters that you're actually following internally. Even main characters of a Stephen King novel can have these moments of really dark, disturbing thoughts, these flashes of anger, these incredibly human moments. Because while they might not be as extreme as Ted Bundy killing college-age girls, it's still realistic. We all feel that. We'll be annoyed. We'll have the thought, well, what if I just stabbed him? That's something everyone, whether you admit it or not, thinks. And if you're saying, well, no, that's never happened to me, how about I cut you off in traffic and slam on my brakes? Maybe then you'll have that thought. Now, this is further enhanced by King's overall style of handling his writing, often talking about the things we'll think about our own bodies, maybe some more socially unacceptable things to bring up that we all certainly think about internally. This will kind of graft you to the character in a way where you relate to them at an extreme level. You think, wow, I've thought those things, I've felt that way. I really actually am in their shoes in a way most authors won't approach. Most authors won't take the time to tell you their character's bathroom routine. King will certainly take the time to describe in detail their bathroom routine and maybe some possible issues they're having along the way, because it grounds them. And when he takes a U-turn and shows you maybe a more dark, angry side, that actually makes it work and feel real. This often drastically inflates King's book's page counts. There's no denying that. He has written some unbelievably long books, and the argument that he could use an editor that is a little more free with the red pen can be made. While reading the book, this can feel tedious, and it's resulted in many readers just putting down his books and labeling them DNF. This situation is not helped by the second characteristic I praised King's writing before as well: concept. We're living in a day and age where the idea of an interconnected universe is run-of-the-mill. It's nothing special. MCU, DCEU, that weird monster universe they tried and failed to make, and countless other franchises are trying to conglomerate together interconnected universes. Well, what if I told you King's been doing that for decades? The most die-hard King readers many years ago noticed that there were some similarities between various situations, monsters, and names across multiple of his stories. Now, not all of his books take place in the same world, but dimensionally, they do intersect. And these conspiracies that have quite a bit of evidence linking them, and a lot of them are just confirmed to be true at this point, link a lot of King's best novels, including It, Shawshank Redemption, The Stand, the entire Dark Tower series, and many more. Up until this point, as far as I am aware, having an interconnected universe that crosses over entire separate series was nearly unheard of, and certainly not done on the scale King has executed it. Whether it's the consistency of the town of Derry or the state of Maine, the usage of the powers in The Shining seeming to be the exact same as the ones used in It to defeat Pennywise, or even the similarity of names, which pollutes many of King's novels. I'm not going to go too deep into all the strings that are pretty clearly attached here. There are many other videos on YouTube, on other channels that are devoted to fully flushing out all these links, and that's not the point of this video. This point is to talk about why King is so great as a horror writer. And I feel the need to point out that once you see that these things are interconnected, once you find your first strand and you follow it to the next world, it makes what Stephen King is doing so much more enticing to the reader. It's like the most engaging, actually real conspiracy theory of all time. Whether it's seeing the gunslinger get into confrontation with a clown demon that has a striking resemblance to Pennywise, or seeing that same gunslinger jump into different worlds that have a striking resemblance to many of King's others. If you want the most straightforward spelling out of all this, I recommend you go to the Wikipedia page for the Stephen King universe. It pretty much spells out how all the links are there. That will hook you and drag you in deeper. Picking up your first King book will be a fascinating adventure. For me, it was It. The book It creeped me out and did a wonderful job of making me go, what the f-? But I didn't quite get the hype. I didn't understand why Stephen King was considered one of the greatest of all time. And now I've started reading more and more of his work. I've gone through The Outsider, quite a bit of Dark Tower. I just finished The Stand, and The Shining is well under my belt. And with the perspective of this massive creation, and I'm hoping that the more you read, the more it makes sense, the more these links seem to have a consistency, I'll finally begin to see a clearer image of the masterwork tapestry that's been decades in the making. I don't know if Stephen King will ever fully unveil all the links and connections and give just like a clear image. I hope he doesn't. It's better as a mystery. Once the magician shows their hand, it's never as engaging again. But with this massive concept, along with his firm grasp of the understanding of what makes humans erratic, what makes us unpredictable, there's no other author who can send these chills through you quite like King, while keeping you engaged and thirsty for more. He's gonna gross you out, he will disturb you, he'll scare the ever-living Christ out of you. But Stephen King will remain consistent as one of the most interesting writers of all time, and certainly earning his spot as the king of horror. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And no duct tape this time, because my knuckles still have not fully recovered from that. Have a good one, y'all. Peace!